Good evening, I'm Regina Lay, standing in for Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight. President Bongbong Marcos facing challenges to his health and leadership. A second and third impeachment complaint were submitted against him even as he spent the night at the hospital over a quote-unquote discomfort.
Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla says he's trying to go to Portugal soon, where apparently Zaldico is still living large in a gated village where houses cost tens of millions of euros.
And the DILG is also looking for Atong Ang, the alleged mastermind in the missing Sabongeros case, and now said to have slipped out via backdoor routes to Cambodia.
The President spent the night under medical observation after experiencing discomfort. His doctors advised rest and monitoring, and his condition remains stable.
Huwag kayo muna masyadong excited dahil it's not a life-threatening condition.
So sir, wala kaming dapat ipag-alala?
Wala, huwag kayo mag-alala. The rumors of my death are highly exaggerated.
President Bongbong Marcos confirmed being hospitalized last night because of what he calls a stress and age-related illness. But now he's back on his toes.
And while he skipped a few events, the chief executive assures his medical condition is not life-threatening at all.
And as the president recovers, his critics are not giving him rest, with more impeachment complaints lodged against him today. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos with tonight's big story.
While the president could not be with us in person, he asked me to convey his warm greetings.
Executive Secretary Ralph Recto said this as he led the awarding of the 10 outstanding young men in Malacanang on Thursday morning. It was supposed to be President Bongbong Marcos's first event today, but according to Palace Press Officer Claire Castro, Marcos was rushed to St. Luke's Medical Center last night due to a discomfort.
The President spent the night under medical observation as a precautionary measure after experiencing discomfort. His doctors advised rest and monitoring, and his condition remains stable.
Yesterday, Wednesday, the president had even attended the 7th founding anniversary of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao or BARM in Cotabato City, but he immediately left.
Malamang po ang naranasan niya ay sobrang pagod sa pagtatrabaho.
But later today, Thursday, Marcos allayed fears about his health. He even joked when asked what message he had for those wishing he were gone.
Huwag kayo muna masyadong excited dahil it's not a life-threatening condition.
So sir, wala kaming dapat ipag-alala?
Wala, huwag kayo mag-alala. The rumors of my death are highly exaggerated.
But he admitted being diagnosed with what he calls a stress-related illness.
What happened was I now have diverticulitis. It's a common complaint amongst apparently people who are heavily stressed and people who are, I have to admit, growing old.
The Mayo Clinic defines diverticulitis as an inflammation of the small pouches in the digestive tract. It often causes sudden lower abdominal pain and irregular bowel habits. And typically, aside from age, it's due to low fiber or high-fat diets, obesity, smoking, alcohol use, and certain anti-inflammatory and opioid medications. Although stress can be an aggravating factor. Despite this, the president resumed work in the palace this afternoon and even attended 2 private meetings, but put on hold a scheduled appointment he had in Ilocos tomorrow. Meantime, the palace brushed aside the second and third impeachment complaints filed against Marcos, or rather, attempted to be filed against him. House Secretary General Cheloy Garafil is overseas and thus the complaints have not been officially received. Yusek Castro also insists that complainants should have solid evidence, especially those on the basis of the so-called PBBM parametrics formula, allegedly a 3-pronged system for distributing over 1.2 trillion pesos in funds designated for legislators' projects, which critics described as essentially pork barrel by design.
Pag sinabi nilang abusive, kailangan talaga i-prove to. Kung wala naman po sila mailalagay na anumang pruweba sa kanilang complaint, naggagawa lamang po sila ng kwento, naghahabi ng istorya. At po sila yung kickbacks, kailangan po pa rin patunayan ito. Hindi po pwedeng nasa guni-guni ng isipan ng tao. So, mahihirapan po sila talagang i-prove to dahil wala naman po talagang ginawa na violation ang ating Pangulo.
Kapatid Arles de los Santos, we are One News.
Let's take a closer look at the 2 impeachment complaints against President Bongbong Marcos that were attempted to be filed at the House of Representatives today. Again, we say attempted because they weren't received by the Office of the Secretary General as Cheloy Garafil is overseas. First to try to lodge their complaint today was the Koalisyong Makabayan. The group is made up of former party list representatives. In their complaint, the group accused Marcos of betrayal of public trust, anchored on allegations of corruption stemming from the flood control scandal. The complaint was endorsed by the 3-member Makabayan bloc from the lower house. The group left the complaint at the SecGen's office, and though it wasn't officially received, complainants say they deem it filed.
Ayaw nilang tanggapin, so ang ginawa ho namin ay nag-iwan kami ng kopya doon sa opisina. Poproblemahin na lang po ni Secretary General when she arrives on Monday ang kanyang trabaho, ministerial work, na ito ay i-refer kaagad, i-transmit sa office ni Speaker D.
That impeachment complaint is deemed filed. Why? Because we delivered it to the office of the Secretary General. Sa ilalim ng rules of court, pag hindi physically present yung subject ng isang papel like a court process, in this case impeachment complaint, ang substituted service iwanan mo sa residence o sa office ng subject. Iniwan na namin, tinanggap naman, so para sa amin, it has been served.
Another group, this one led by former Congressman Mike Defensor and former Ilocos Sur Governor Chavit Singson, filed the 3rd impeachment complaint against President Bongbong Marcos, which was also refused by the OSG due to Garafil's absence. The group charged Marcos with alleged culpable violation of the Constitution, betrayal of public trust, graft and corruption, and other high crimes. Defensor criticized the OSG's refusal to accept their impeachment complaint as a clear violation of both the rules of the House and the Constitution. The group did not leave a copy of the petition at Garafil's office and does not intend to refile the case on Monday.
There is no discretion given to the Secretary General to reject, screen, delay, or block such filings. By refusing to accept the complaint, the office effectively usurps the constitutional authority of the House itself and denies the Filipino people their only lawful mechanism to raise grievances against a sitting president.
The House Committee on Justice is tasked to determine whether an impeachment complaint has enough merit to be elevated to a vote by the lower chamber. To shed light on that, joining us tonight, we've got House Justice Committee Chairperson, Congresswoman Jervil Luistro. Good evening, Congresswoman. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here in the Big Story, One News.
That's a complete framing of the story. Okay, first I'd like you to weigh in, Congresswoman, if you would, on the 2nd and 3rd complaints, right? So I guess you heard the news item we ran before you, which is that Makabayan Bloc and another group led by former Congressman Chavit Singson and Mike Defensor have lodged complaints, impeachment complaints against the president. Now, the Secretary General, Cheloy Garafil, wasn't there to officially receive them. But these 2 groups are saying that it's deemed filed because, number one, the Makabayan Bloc left it at her office, and the second group, former Congressman Defensor, said, well, it's there's no discretion given to the SecGen to refuse the filing. That usurps constitutional authority given to the lower house. What do you think?
That is actually a call that falls to the authority of the Secretary General, no? As to the parameters that she will apply in receiving or having it received whenever he is not around in the office, it is a decision that must come from her, no? I apologize that I cannot comment on that particular issue because I understand that it is Secretary SecGen Cheloy Garafil who is in the best position to answer that.
But is there not anything in the House rules or House ethics protocols that defines, okay, what happens when the Secretary General herself or himself is away and a formal complaint is lodged? Is there not such a provision?
I am not certain if there is specific rule on that, but I wish to believe that since impeachment complaint is a very sensitive document, perhaps the staff do not have the necessary confidence to take action or even receive that without the instruction or authority coming from the Secretary General herself.
But is it also not true that the role of the office of the SecGen in cases of impeachment is only ministerial, meaning sila lang yung tagatanggap? They don't really have to exercise any discretion, Congresswoman, when it comes to that. So how does that work pag absent po yung SecGen? Even if for other matters, does the office stop functioning or receiving like documents and stuff?
Well, I agree that that is a ministerial function. However, it is still the power and the authority of the head of office to decide on that. And if the staff who are around in the office do not have the confidence to decide on the matter, then I believe that there is really a problem if the SecGen is not there and no one is willing to receive the impeachment complaint.
And just to clarify, obviously, it's the office of the SecGen that is tasked to receive these papers. But does she report to anyone? Like, is technically, like the speaker, is he her boss? And so, can he then kind of decide for her in her absence?
Well, under the rules, it is really the office of the SecGen who has to receive the impeachment complaint. But I don't think it is necessary for her to report to anyone concerning the discharge of this particular function.
Well, Congresswoman, one of the key issues back in the 19th Congress, if we recall, was the timing, particularly when the SecGen would need to transmit this to the office of the Speaker. And there was that word immediately. But how do we define that word? And has this been clarified in Congress already?
Well, as far as I am concerned, by immediately, it means right away, no? And as a matter of fact, the first impeachment complaint that was filed against the president, I saw it in the news, has been transmitted already to the office of the Speaker. Now, with regards to the second and third impeachment complaint, I could see that it is the availability of the SecGen because, as I heard from the news, she's on official business overseas. That prompted this problem of those impeachment complaints not being received by the office of the Secretary General.
And Congresswoman, as we speak, there are now 3 impeachment complaints against President Bongbong Marcos. But at what stage or what scenario would trigger a consolidation of all these complaints?
I understand that after the transmittal from the office of the SecGen to the office of the Speaker, the latter has a period of 10 session days to include it in the order of business of the plenary. And then the plenary has a period of 3 session days to transmit it to the Committee on Justice. Based on the Francisco ruling, it is indeed the referral of the impeachment complaint to the Justice Committee that completes the initiation process, which means that it triggers the running of the prohibition period, which provides that there should be one impeachment complaint only against one impeachable official per year. No? So I understand that once one impeachment complaint is referred to the Justice Committee, it technically bars the subsequent impeachment complaints.
Okay,
And so has the first impeachment complaint against President Marcos been referred to your committee?
Not yet, because we're still on recess and we will be resuming on January 6, no? Ang nakita ko lang sa news, it has been Yeah, that will be this coming Monday.
Yes, yes.
So, ang nakita ko lang sa news, transmitted siya sa office ni Speaker, but even the referral, the inclusion of the impeachment, the first impeachment complaint in the order of business of the plenary, I think cannot be done until and unless we have resumed our session. And that will be happening the resumption of session will be happening on January 26th, this coming Monday.
You're right, Congresswoman. I did note it resumes January 26th. I thought January 26th now because there's been so many things happening. I thought it was the last week of January already. I apologize for that. But have you had a chance to,
As a matter of fact, we have not seen each other, no? Kaya even to this time, wala pa kaming official information except those na nakikita ko sa news, no? Even the Justice Committee has not yet convened, no? Tapos yung mga Kongs, they are in their respective districts. And I think all of them are busy with their own concerns in their districts. So it will be January 6 when we will be getting the official information about this impeachment complaints.
So everything you know about the first impeachment complaint, you've seen on the news. You haven't seen hide nor hair of the actual complaint.
Yeah.
And having said that,
Nasusubaybayan ko lang sila sa news eh.
Kami na magbabasa for you, Congresswoman.
So, Congresswoman, having said that, no, so Monday pa magre-resume yung session, that means the second and the third complaint are not, kumbaga, in trouble or in danger of just falling out of circulation. I mean, there is still time. Although the third group said they will not refile on Monday, the second one says they left a copy there. I guess good faith na lang talaga come Monday.
I cannot comment on that because it really depends on the members of the House once they reach the plenary, no? Kasi as you have said, hindi pa sila na-receive sa office ni SecGen. After that, there should be transmittal to happen from office of SecGen to Speaker. And then from Speaker, 10 session days ba to refer it to the plenary, no? So kung mag-abot-abot sila sa plenary, it really depends on the House members what they're going to do about it, that there are 3 impeachment complaints.
And what is your sense? I know you haven't seen your colleagues yet, but I'm sure you have chat groups, Congresswoman. As early as now, are your colleagues preparing, and you as well, and your co-members at the Committee on Justice?
Ayaw nilang magpaabala eh.
They don't want to think
They're
about
busy
it.
in their respective districts eh. No? Pero ako kasi, I am a conservative type of lawyer and I really stick to the rules. So my concern is to take care and receive of the impeachment complaint which will be referred by the plenary to the Justice Committee. No? Actually, what's happening in the Office of the Secretary General is really exclusive upon her. What's happening in the Office of the Speaker is exclusive upon him. What's happening or what will gonna happen in the plenary will depend really on the members of the House. Right now, we are 313, no? So kung mag-abot-abot yan sa floor, sa plenary, it depends on them whether the first impeachment complaint will be referred to the Justice Committee, which will technically bar the proceeding with respect to the 2 subsequent complaints, no? Or should they consider transmitting all these 3 at the same time? If that will happen, then we will be prompted, as far as I know, we will be prompted to consolidate these 3 impeachment complaints before the Justice Committee.
But Congresswoman, at the same time, there's a big question mark when it comes to the impeachment process because the Supreme Court has yet to rule on this pending motion for reconsideration on the impeachment complaint last year. Given that uncertainty, Congresswoman, aling rules po ba ang susundan ng Committee on Justice while we await a decision of the Supreme Court?
You're correct about that, no? But we have to distinguish under what mode ba is this impeachment complaint being filed, no? Let us share to our kababayan, our fellow countrymen. Dalawa po ang modes of filing an impeachment complaint. One is by private individual, sponsored by a House member. And this is the case in the first impeachment complaint against the President. It can also be done by the House member himself, at least for the first mode, yung dalawang yon, no? But for the second mode, ito po yung filed and verified by at least 1/3 of the members of the House. And this is what happened in the impeachment complaint against Vice President, which was declared by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. However, there is a pending motion for reconsideration of the House of Representatives, which remains unresolved by the Supreme Court. To me, that decision of the Honorable Supreme Court hasn't ripened yet into a jurisprudence because it hasn't reached its finality because of the pendency of the MR. No? Now, I am sharing these two important modes to answer your question, anong gagawin? Halimbawang merong subsequent or second impeachment complaint. It depends. If it will be filed under the first mode, then referral to the Justice Committee is mandatory. Now, if it will be filed under the second mode, similar to the first impeachment complaint, na supported ng 1/3, there lies the problem. Because the question is, what rule are we going to apply? No? If we will be following the decision of, if the House of Representatives, because this is not my call, this is the call of all the members. If the HREP will be following the decision of the Supreme Court, technically, we are withdrawing already our motion for reconsideration. No? And we have to understand also, itong notice and hearing requirement really does not appear under the Constitution and under the present rules. Nasama lang to because of the Supreme Court decision. No? Nonetheless, I wish to express my highest regard and respect to the Supreme Court, and we recognize them as the final arbiter of all controversies arising from laws and rules which are being interpreted. No? Now, if we will do the other way, follow the letters of the Constitution, which is my type of lawyer because I am conservative, I stick to the rules. If we will follow the letters of the Constitution, transmit immediately to the Senate, we might be facing another petition.
Exactly.
Another petition questioning the constitutionality of that impeachment complaint, and eventually we might be declared again as unconstitutional. So that is the problem.
Exactly. And some people we've spoken to say that perhaps that's the reason the Supreme Court has not decided on that MR yet. Because either way they rule, a lot of people will be upset. But Congresswoman, I'm sure you're also well aware of the potential that you could be entering, coming back from recess, with having to deal with impeachment complaints for two people, for the President and the Vice President, because February 6th is just around the corner, and that's when the one-year prohibition bar expires on the VP's impeachment. What is the game plan there?
Well, this is a constitutional duty, no? And whether we like it or not, we have to discharge our function as members of the Justice Committee. Let me express lang, I have full faith and confidence to the 38 members of the Justice Committee, and I am confident whether this is one or two separate impeachment complaints against the highest official and against the second highest official, I am confident that the members of the Justice Committee can discharge their function very well.
Okay, but as we all know, of course, and we keep saying this over and over again since last year, impeachment is very much a political exercise. Having said that, Congresswoman, you mentioned two modes, diba? So right now, we're only dealing with mode 1, right? Filer backed by a House member, etc. So the Supreme Court MR is not so meaningful as of the moment. But in terms of appetite,
yes, I agree.
Yeah, in terms of appetite, right, for an impeachment in the 20th Congress, is it still there under new leadership, under the new speaker who has said he's kind of, on the fence about it?
But whose impeachment are we talking about? The president's or the vice president's?
He just said, I think it was in general impeachment. I guess we used to assume
for any
it was
impeachment.
Yeah.
Okay, appetite for any impeachment.
Well, I have some colleagues who are commenting that they felt frustrated about what happened to the first impeachment complaint. And somehow this would affect the appetite, quote unquote, that you are referring to with respect to the present and possibly the subsequent impeachment complaints which might be filed against the president and the vice president, no? Pero right now kasi wala tayong masyadong makausap eh. Perhaps we will have an interesting discussion with our colleagues once they're back this January 26.
And you personally, what are you doing? Are you in advance reading up? Because kayo po yung chairperson, so medyo quote-unquote lugi po kayo, no, compared to the other members, because you're the head of the committee.
Since I confirmed the first impeachment complaint of the president, I admit that I went back to my impeachment materials and went back to reading of the rules. I really need to review myself about the rules on impeachment.
Okay, and then we'll touch base with you again after that, once session resumes and you have made a decision on the way to go. But for now, we'll leave that there. Thanks so much for talking to us. House Justice Committee Chair, Congresswoman Jervil Luistro.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla says he's trying to get to Portugal soon, where Zaldico is allegedly still living large. The big story returns in just a bit. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching The Big Story here on One News. Is fugitive Charlie Atong Ang in Cambodia? Well, DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla said today that whistleblower Julie Patidongan gave him the information. According to Patidongan, Ang has access to Cambodia and has ways to get there. Remulla also cited reports that Ang set up an online sabong operation in Cambodia, suggesting that he has an established network in the country. Remulla, however, said that he believes Atong Ang is likely still in the Philippines. He added that the government has begun moving to cancel Ang's passport and freeze his assets.
Reportedly, nagtayo siya itong ng sariling online sabong facility doon. Kaya maraming sa kaibigan, nagnilugar na siya ron. So, it is possible, but improbable na nakaalis na siya ng bansa. We are not counting it out. At ngayon pa lang, ando doon yung mga PNP intel natin na nag-coordinate sa mga local authorities sa buong Southeast Asia.
From one fugitive to another, Zaldico is apparently in Lisbon, Portugal. Interior Secretary Remulla told our sister program Storycon earlier. And Ko is not just living in any ordinary house, but apparently within a gated exclusive village where houses cost upwards of 10 million euros. In fact, Secretary Remulla described it as their version of Forbes Park. He also said Ko owned the house and wasn't just renting. Remulla also said they've since learned that the former lawmaker obtained a Portuguese golden visa nearly a decade ago, which points to his criminal intent, according to Remulla. As of last we heard, you said that he was likely living in Lisbon, Portugal. Is that still accurate?
Yes, it's still accurate. We have operatives on the ground, and it seems accurate. He's in a gated community outside, in the outskirts of Lisbon. Yung parang Forbes Park nila.
Wow. Forbes Park nila.
Oh.
That's the equivalent. That's how much would that's in euros too.
I would figure minimum 10 million euros ang isang bahay doon.
As such, Remulla says he plans to travel to Portugal soon and will just seek permission from President Marcos. The secretary wants to verify the so-called feelers that Ko allegedly sent, which were relayed to a Filipino priest based in Portugal. Even then, Remulla admits because there is no treaty with Portugal, it's not like he can arrest Ko even if they bumped into each other on the street.
I will make my way to Portugal soon and talk to the priest. Kilala ko naman yung pari na kinausap niya. I will see if the reports are true. Kasi kung magkita naman kami ron, wala akong magagawa. I cannot arrest him. Diba?
Yeah.
Kung totoo ang sinasabi niya, mag-aarap kami ng pare.
Still on the flood control scandal, Remulla said authorities have ruled out everything else but suicide in the death of late DPWH Undersecretary Catalina Cabral, citing DNA results and simulation analyses. But the investigation into her is moving along, and next up, they're looking to file asset seizure and forfeiture cases. That's in connection with a quote-unquote special friend of Cabral's, who Remulla says is the true owner of Wawaw Builders, one of the flood control contractors. He estimates that all of these assets linked to the special friend amount to between 10 to 15 billion pesos, including Ion Hotel in Baguio.
Special friend siya na meron silang mga joint investments na pwedeng habulin ng gobyerno. Special friend niya, ang may-ari ng Wawaw. Wawaw Construction? Yung Wawaw Construction, ang subsidiary niya, ang bumili ng Ion Hotel from Holiday Inn. Yung Ion naman, binili ng close confidant ni Congressman Yap ng Benguet.
And several figures linked to the flood control scam have already returned money for restitution. But where did it come from when their assets are supposedly frozen? Prosecutor General Richard Fadolion raised the issue after some suspects, including those under the DOJ's Witness Protection Program, turned over cash tied to infrastructure contracts. He said documents show that some of the money returned was withdrawn as early as 2019, raising red flags on how it was kept and moved. Fadolion added that if the Bangko Sentral moves to demonetize old 1,000 peso bills, more questionable funds could surface.
Yung assets nila frozen. Pero nagtataka ka, ang tanong ng tao, saan mo kinuha yan? Mag-iisip ka tuloy, these people do not use the banking system anymore because it's easily traceable. Magugulat ba ako kung nasa dingding ng pader yan o binaon sa lupa? Hindi na ako magugulat kasi...
Meanwhile, the Prosecutor General admitted that the investigation will take time with no definite timeline as yet. For now, cases are being prepared over 3 alleged ghost flood control projects in Bulacan. He also said the preliminary investigation involving Senator Jinggoy Estrada is set to begin before the end of January.
So, ang hinihiling lang po namin, konting pag-unawa. Alam po namin ang kagustuhan at hinihiling ng taong bayan. Ginagawa po natin lahat, pero hindi po tayo pwede magpadala sa galit. Kailangan pong mangibabaw pa rin yung ating paniniwala sa batas.
Coming back to DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla's interview on Storycon earlier, he insists that he did inform General Nicolas Torre III of his retirement from the Philippine National Police. Remulla said he even called a former PNP chief to congratulate him on his appointment as General Manager of the MMDA, then proceeded to inform him that he already processed Torre's retirement and pension. Torre just has to secure the necessary clearances, to which General allegedly replied, "Okay, we'll do that." Secretary Remulla said he did this to ensure Torre will not run afoul of the double compensation rule, which is prohibited for public officials unless specifically authorized by law. Remulla said Torre would have otherwise forfeited 190,000 pesos in monthly pension plus a lump sum of about 7.5 million pesos.
By function of law, kung tumanggap ka ng ibang trabaho sa gobyerno, ipso facto, resign ka from your position. Alam mo, marami kami pinagdaanan ng taong yan. Hindi kami nagkakasundo sa maraming bagay. But para sa akin, yung pinaghirapan niya bilang pulis, dapat ma-enjoy niya yan, yung pension niya. Diba?
Meantime, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said she has talked to General Torre and clarified the misunderstanding. She confirmed again that Torre already accepted the optional retirement plan, relinquished his badge, and will receive his full benefits for a 4-star general. And because of this, Police OIC Lieutenant General Jose Nartates Jr. will finally become PNP Chief, no longer at acting capacity, and he will finally be donned with the highest rank soon.
Accepted po niya yun. Dahil po tinanggap niya po ang posisyon na ito, alam niya naman po kung ano po ang maaaring mangyari at muli, ang mangyayari lamang po, siya po ay tatanggap ng benepisyo, full benefits, at lahat ng emoluments as a 4-star general.
And we're pausing for another quick break, but right after that, U.S. President Donald Trump says he is not taking Greenland by force, but makes it very clear that he still wants control of the Danish territory. The big story will be right back. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. In world news, U.S. President Donald Trump has dropped his threat of imposing tariffs on the European Union for opposing his plans to acquire Greenland. On Truth Social, he posted that he met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and together formed a framework for a future deal on Greenland and the entire Arctic region. He goes on to say that this solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the U.S. and all NATO nations. Trump didn't give more details on the framework, though, but he did deliver a special address at the ongoing World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where the mood has been tense and grim due to his threat of tariffs and his push to wrest control of Greenland from Denmark. In his address, Trump ruled out using force to seize the Arctic territory.
Probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
In his speech at the WEF, which was wide-ranging but often rambling for the better part of 70 minutes, Trump also chided Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Carney had delivered a rousing speech the day before on what he called the rupture in the world order. He stressed the end of the rules-based international order as we know it and urged middle power countries to act together to counter the rise of hard power. Carney was met with a rare standing ovation at WEF. But Trump, for one, was not so impressed, saying, quote-unquote, Canada lives because of the United States.
We're building the Golden Dome. That's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful.
During the Q&A after his speech, Trump also boasted about having close ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, for whom he had high praises.
So I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi and with President Putin. Talk about, you know, the larger powers. But I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi of China. He's an incredible man. What he's done is amazing. He's highly respected by everybody.
Still at Davos, Bloomberg Media reports that European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde walked out of an exclusive high-level dinner after U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick started criticizing Europe. Lutnick was apparently belittling European companies for their lack of competitiveness compared to American firms. Separately, Lagarde, in an interview with China's CGTN, said countries should ready themselves for changes to the international order, which she says will be a long-term issue.
Whenever there is war in the world, and there is plenty of that at the moment, it is a brake on economic development. It is a brake on growth, and obviously it is affecting the life of people. The challenge to the international order, which is a longer-term issue which requires that we prepare ourselves and that maybe we change the way in which we operate, is a more medium and long-term issue.
All right, to talk more about this, let's now bring in geopolitical analyst Richard Haydarian, coming to us live from Oxford, is that right? In London.
Yes, hello.
You should have.
Wala pa yung British accent ko eh.
You should have crossed. You should have crossed over to Davos and see what all the fuss was about. I heard it's a different mood this year.
I'm still checking Greenland. Baka susugurin pa yung Greenland. I'm equidistant with Davos and Kangaroo-Lushwa, just to make sure. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm sure you're monitoring the goings on there. So in general, what did you think? I mean, obviously Trump and his policies were front and center this time around, and there's a lot of people calling saying it's the end of the rules-based international order as we know it.
Yeah, again, just to be clear, the Canadian Prime Minister was not playing around this. He was clear that the rules-based order was never perfect and it was very selectively applied. But now even a pretense to a selective application of a rules-based order is not there. To be honest, the Europeans already had an inkling of this during the Munich Secret Conference speech by Vice President J.D. Vance the other year, when the American vice president basically chided and some would say belittled the Europeans. Now you have practically all top American officials doing that, including President Trump, who, as you showed earlier, seems to be very fond of strong men of superpower countries like China, like Russia, right? For that matter. So in many ways, if you really follow the speeches by top European officials, whether it's Ursula von der Leyen, whether it's top commissioners of the European Union, whether it's the really strong interventions by the Finn president and other important leaders, it looks like we're seeing the beginnings of Europe's declaration of independence from the United States. So for the past few weeks, the Europeans made it absolutely clear that they're not going to accommodate any kind of a Venezuela-style regime change in Greenland, whereby the U.S. will just seamlessly and stealthily basically take over Greenland. They would count that as an invasion of a NATO territory, in effect, ipso facto, Denmark's territory, right? And the Greenland people, who I met also a few years ago, who also don't see themselves as part of Denmark, they're Inuit, they have different culture, different flag, you need separate permit to get into Greenland. They also don't want to be part of the United States. They love the welfare system that the Danes and all of the benefits they can get from the Danish form of market economy. So the Europeans made it very clear, if the US makes an aggressive move there, that will be the end of not only NATO, but potentially the whole transatlantic alliance that has defined the post-war period in past 7 decades. And you saw from the speeches of Carney in Canada, but also top leaders like French President Macron, that Europe is recognizing that the US is no longer the reliable ally they look up to, and that Europe has to stand on its own. So one of the most interesting discussions we saw in Davos the other year was one of the commissioners, economy commissioners of EU, talking about Europe developing even its own financial system, its own credit card system. So this is relevant because as we speak, the US is imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court, where Duterte is. So the Europeans are going to set up their own financial system. So in short, the Europeans are realizing they'll have to really stand up on their own. And for all the belittling of Europe, and it's true that Europe's military capabilities are nowhere close to where it should be, this is still the second largest economy in the world, minus the United Kingdom. And if you bring in the United Kingdom, the combined potential of Europe, financially, technologically, militarily, is not a small thing. But just to end on this point, what the Prime Minister of Canada also made it very clear is that the future of the world may not necessarily be Chinese-dominated or American-dominated. It could be based on a coalition of middle-sized, like-minded countries, from Canada to Australia, from Japan to South Korea, India, and Europe, and I would say also the Philippines potentially in that mix.
Okay, yes, that's the middle powers, quote unquote, Richard. But tell us here in the Philippines why we should care. I mean, we've been nonstop hearing this rules-based international order, especially when we discuss the West Philippine Sea and issues over there. Will this affect us?
Well, again, kaya nga gusto ko yung speech ni Prime Minister Carney is honest naman siya na may hypocrisy naman talaga pagdating sa application of the rules-based international order. He didn't name specific issues, pero alam naman natin iba yung response ng, for instance, European countries to what happened in Ukraine vis-a-vis what happened in Gaza, vis-a-vis what happened in Venezuela and what could happen in Iran soon. So we had even one European Prime Minister, the Greek Prime Minister, saying, oh, we can discuss the legalities of the Maduro operation later on. So clearly that's hypocrisy. Absolutely that's hypocrisy. And Carney very politely and suavely mentioned that. And Prime Minister Carney of Canada is very familiar with Europe. He studied here in Oxford. He was the central banker, basically Treasury Secretary here in the UK. He has Irish background. He understands Europe. And even Canadians are talking about joining Europe or joining the European Union perhaps down the road if things go crazy with the United States. So basically the message here is that if we cannot rely on the US, it doesn't mean we're just going to be a prey to Russia, or it doesn't mean that China will dominate the world. No, if we put actually our resources together, we Europeans alone can be a global pole of power. And then if we work with others, and you saw also sort of on their line talking about India, talking about United Arab Emirates, talking about other major middle powers, then you can actually reshape the global order in ways that is more pluralistic and inclusive.
Okay, but Richard, what role did NATO play and how crucial was their role in reining in the position of the US? And do smaller allies, do they really have the leverage to negotiate?
Yeah, actually, I didn't answer them. So obviously, para sa Pilipinas, mahalaga itong issue ng rules-based international orders because whether itong issue yung United Nations Convention Law of the Sea, yung ating arbitration case laban sa China, or whether ito yung International Criminal Court at saka holding Duterte-era administrations accountable for EJ case, lahat ng mga issue na yan, umaasa tayo sa mga international courts, international law regimes. No? So, kung ikaw ay isang mas maliit na bansa at hindi ko maintindihan yung mga ibang MAGA Pinoy dyan na tuwan-tuwa dito sa Mach politic ni Trump, power politics ni Trump. Like, kung ikaw ay hindi superpower, and rule of jungle, basically, kung sinong superpower, what will stop China tomorrow from doing what Americans did to Maduro, from doing to a Filipino president they don't like? Now, obviously, US is way ahead of China militarily for now, but in 5 to 10 years from now, when China will be also a military superpower, not only economic superpower, what will stop them from saying, oh, if US can do that to Maduro or whoever else before, we can also do that to Taipei, to Manila, which is even more vulnerable, in my opinion, than Taipei. If ever we have a future president who's even more outspoken than BBM on the West Philippine Sea issues. So obviously, nasa interest po natin ang rules-based international order, but we alone, we cannot do it. We have to work with other mid-sized countries who have resources, who are also invested in rules-based international order, and Europeans literally host international bodies like ICJ, like ICC, like PCA, and so on and so forth. So yun ang issue ngayon. So I think in terms of principle, there's already recognition na tapos na yung Pax Americana as we know it. But the question right now is, okay, what are we going to build in its stead? And how are we going to move forward? And that's why this year, mahalaga yan, dahil tayong ASEAN chair, marami sa mga world leaders are going to come to Manila. Likely Trump and Xi Jinping will come to Manila, but also Macron, also top leaders from Europe, Ursula von der Leyen, among others. And there, I hope the Philippines opens this kind of serious discussion.
Yeah.
You know what's even interesting is that if you talk to top officials in the Trump administration, they'll also tell you, yeah, you guys have to pick up the tabs, right?
Yeah,
that we're sick and tired of world police.
Yes, so I wanted to ask you, related to that, should we adjust our foreign policy to accommodate this new world order?
Or maybe the better question to ask would be, are we recalibrating fast enough? Because if it's true that we've entered the might is right era, then do you get the sense that the administration is shifting gears fast enough?
Oh, I think we already preempted this, diba? Just look at our current foreign secretary, Lazaro, who's known as being very adept in dealing with China. She was very much in charge of the China dossier when we had all of those problems in the West Philippine Sea. If you look at the language of President Marcos on Taiwan issues and South China Sea issue, he keeps on talking about diplomacy and conciliation. He reached out to President Xi Jinping last year on the sidelines of APEC personally to invite President Xi Jinping to the Philippines and vice versa, Philippines to the APEC summit in China. So as we speak, yes, I think our elites, our political elites, policymakers, and strategists are aware may limitasyon talaga yung reliability ng United States. But that doesn't mean we're going to dump our alliance with the U.S. No, U.S. is still valuable to the Philippines. We still need the U.S. to balance against the worst instincts of China. But it also means we have to work double time with other mid-sized countries like Japan, like Europe, among others, who also realize, like us, that you don't want to be under China's influence, but you cannot also fully rely on America. So I think here there's an opportunity for us to make that move. At sana yung mga presidentiables na nag-iisip na mag-succeed kay BBM as early as now already put their foreign policy teams together and really calibrate what we should do. The only good thing is we're not an immediate neighbor of any of these two superpowers, right? Even though China claims West Philippine Sea. But having said that, we have to seriously consider a possibility of a U.S. that is much more inert and a China which is much more aggressive, or at least similar to what the U.S. has been doing to the rest of the world in the past half a decade.
Right. Well, he's hoping the people that matter are listening. But we're going to have to leave that there. Thank you so much for your insights today. And stay warm over there. Richard Haydarian, geopolitical analyst.
Right, and before we go tonight, well, Filipinos now have a real-time window to the world with the launch of Asia's very first portal sculpture. Our big picture tonight is the newly opened portal along 5th Avenue on Bonifacio High Street in Taguig City. It features a 24/7 live video link connecting Manila to other portal sites in Lithuania, Poland, Ireland, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Portal founder Benedictas Gillis said bringing the installation to Manila highlights the city's strong sense of human connection and expands their vision of a world linked not by borders, but by direct and shared encounters. The network rotates live feeds across its global locations, designed as a bridge to what Gillis calls a united planet.
Very nice concept.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
I saw it earlier.
We live not too far away.
BTC girls.
But there's also nobody filtering when people make rude gestures or funny
It's
faces.
I guess that's part of
of life.
That's
Yeah,
part of
that's
it.
part of life.
But the funny thing was when I passed it earlier, there was no one making funny gestures or anything.
People were
I
just
saw
walking
street.
past.
Not even. There was like at that time, literally nobody. There was a street, some parked cars. I'm not even sure where it was.
Said hi.
That's gonna be my weekend agenda to try to pass
Go
by
to the portal and say
Yeah.
hi to everybody.
It's funny because yesterday, so Filipinos were trying it out, and I saw a video where they were saying hi also to Filipinos in the United States. So
okay.
parang Pinoy pa rin yung nakita nila
Well,
on the other side.
Our
So
diaspora.
it's like an OFW cam.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Libreng
funny.
tawag.
Okay, and that's it for the big story this Thursday. Thank you so much for watching.
We are back here tomorrow at 8 p.m. See you then.
Okay, but we are one news all sides all the time. Have a good night.